Okay, we are live. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's A Month of Service presentation of community law tips and criminal law. This is supposed to be criminal law tips. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, community law, criminal law. We're giving you tips on everything today and having a community discussion here. So my name is Nia Murray, and I am programs coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery CDC, and we are one of the partners in the Month of Service partnership. Included in our partnership is also the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, and joining us today is Ms. Myra Hippolyte. Also, our presenting partner representing the Houston Bar Association is volunteer attorney, Mr. Chris McKinney, and he's going to be doing part of our presentation today on community law tips. We also have joining us today with the City of Houston Office of Police Reform and Accountability is Ms. Crystal Okafor. Okorafor. I'm gonna get it right. I'm gonna get it right.
All right. Third time the charm. You got it.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, the Month of Service is a collaboration of these 8 different organizations, including Neighborhood Recovery, the City of Houston, Houston Bar Association, Lone Star Legal Aid, the Earl Carl Institute, Houston Volunteer Lawyers, Harris County Appraisal District, Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office. And collectively, we collaborate on a monthly basis to offer a variety of different workshops relative to community empowerment, to asset building, asset protection, and the maintaining of generational wealth. So we've been doing this collaboration for probably 4 or 5 years or so. We used to go out into the community and pick a designated community, have a month-long set of workshops in a particular community. We pick up and go to another community and do the exact same thing all over again. So, but of course, we know due to COVID, everything had to move to a virtual format. So we didn't want to stop doing what we were doing. We wanted to continue spreading the word and getting information out to the community about available resources that were out there that people can take advantage of, that they don't sometimes know about, provide information about helping to preserve their generational wealth. When people have questions about property taxes or wills or estate planning, and they don't know what to do or where to go, then we wanted to provide that information so people will know. The series that we have developed starting this year was our community empowerment series. So we wanted to provide a variety of presentations about community empowerment so that people will know what is my capacity? What can I do? What can I do to make my life better? What can I do to make my community better? So so one of the topics that was brought up was about policing. What happens when you get stopped by the police? Especially with today's era, where things are going on, we know the importance of having that kind of a community conversation. And that's what we want to do. We want to have a discussion. We want to have a conversation. So we are going to be presenting this information today. We want you guys to be as interactive as you possibly can. If you do have questions, we ask that you keep your questions to be as general as you possibly can. This session is being recorded, as well as being broadcast live on our social media platform and Facebook. So please follow us at Amos Houston TX so that you can go back and view the presentation again. We want to try to protect your privacy as much as possible. So we ask that you keep your questions to be general and not have any personal detail information getting out there for everybody to actually have access to. In addition to that, the information that's provided here today is for educational purposes only. It is not legal advice, but again, it's just community information and resources so that you'll know what to do, some little tips. But we do encourage you, if you find yourself in need of legal services, to reach out to our legal service partners to apply for services with them for no charge. So with that being said, I'd like us to introduce our partners, and we're going to introduce our presenters, and we're going to move right on into our presentation. So feel free to type whatever questions that you may have in the chat, and we will get to those at the end of the presentation and open up for a discussion. So Ms. Myra, would you like to go ahead?
Good afternoon. My name is Myra Hippolyte, and I work with the City of Houston Department of Neighborhoods under the direction of Director Takasha Francis, on behalf of Mayor Sylvester Turner and Director Francis, we want to welcome you to the Month of Service program. This partnership is a great collaboration. It's all about giving back free information to the Houston community, Harris County, and state of Texas community. We've come to find out that lately, or within the last year, we're getting a lot of the community throughout the state of Texas and other states attending many of our virtual workshops. Guys, this virtual workshops is all about that. We call it the Month of Service because it's free information. A lot of times you're going through many stressors in your life. We're still going through COVID-19. We went through Winter Storm Uri. We've gone through many hurricanes and many floodings. I mean, if it's not one thing, it's always something else. And when we're going through that stressor, we're going like, oh my God, okay, what's step 1, 2, 3? What do we need to do? Do I need to call my insurance? Do I need to call my state representative? Do I need to call an attorney? And this is what the Month of Service is all about. When you're going through that stressor, we first want to let you know that you're not alone. You have a team of friends that are standing right by your side. And when we're saying we're standing right by your side, it's by giving you free information that when you go through your stressor, you know exactly what to do or who to call. So guys, we're walking right by your side, but we're not holding your hand. By that, I mean, we're walking by your side by giving you this free information, but it takes you to come and see these workshops and get educated and pass the information on. Thank you, everyone. And you guys have a blessed and safe day and keep shooting for the stars. You know, that's the only way to keep going. Thanks.
Okay. Crystal, let's have you do a quick introduction, and we'll have Chris introduce, and then we'll move on into Chris's presentation. Crystal.
Sorry, I'm still struggling with technology. I know it's only been 18 months, but I'm gonna get there. My name is Crystal Okorafor, and I am the Deputy Inspector General of the newly created Office of Policing Reform and Accountability. My office was created in response to the George Floyd situation. During that time, Mayor Turner convened the Mayor's Task Force on Policing Reform. Out of that came a lot of recommendations, and one of those was to create an accountability office. We are tasked with overseeing the Independent Police Oversight Board. We take on complaints for misconduct by Houston police officers. We do community outreach like today. A little bit about myself. I am an attorney. I went to the University of Texas at Austin for undergrad, and then I went to Thurgood Marshall School of Law here in Houston. I started my legal career at the district attorney's office, and fun fact, Chris McKinney was my felony or misdemeanor too. So we started in the same, my first day, he was one of my supervisors. So it's full circle being here today with him. And then I stayed there for 8 years. And at the time when I left, I was a felony chief and ran the 338th District Court, handling all felony cases. And then I've been with the city almost a year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Crystal. Okay, Chris, go ahead.
All right, well, thank you so much. My name is Chris McKinney. I'm a criminal defense attorney here in Houston. My primary practice is criminal law. My background stems from starting off at the Harris County DA's office with Crystal. Spent a lot of years there, wound up in the misdemeanor divisions, the felony divisions, as well as the special crimes division. So now that I'm a criminal defense attorney, I've kind of seen it from both sides. And so I use all that training and all that experience that I have in order to help people who find themselves in mix-ups or misunderstandings. And so part of the thing I want to talk about today is how we can all live together in our community. And the citizens and police in our community are all important players. But we need to get along. We need to know how to make that interaction with police so that they understand, one, that we respect them, two, we're not going to do any harm to them, and then kind of vice versa. So there are certain, I guess, scripts that can be played out to have the best possible outcome whenever somebody is faced with a situation where they may not fully understand what's going on. Not everybody has an experience in the criminal law world. And that's a good thing. That's a real good thing. And so this talk is supposed to at least guide you and inform you about what type of expectations to have while dealing with the police, and what rights that you have in dealing with them as well. So I'll go ahead and start sharing my little screen right here. And let's see. Did I do that right? All right, I'm getting some nods, yes.
Yes.
So this is the Citizen's Guide to Police Encounters. You can call it criminal law tips, whatever you want. But, it's all based upon that mutual respect and that community empowerment. And that's all important for us to abide by a set of rules that we can all understand. And that's where the law comes in. So like I was talking about, I'm a criminal defense attorney here. I'm actually board certified in criminal law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. I'm also a faculty member for the National College of DUI Defense. And like I was telling you about earlier, I'm a former Harris County prosecutor. Now, a lot of people say, Chris, you're a criminal defense attorney. You must like whenever people break the law. No, that's absolutely not right. I don't encourage anybody to break the law. I want people to live safely and respectfully in this community. I'm a husband, I'm a father. I want people to abide by rules. If somebody gets caught up in a situation that maybe that they aren't cut out for, well, then that's why an attorney can step in. And there's a bunch of different things that attorneys can provide in terms of resources, knowledge, experience, obviously, in helping people out of these kind of tough situations. But we shouldn't forget about, the community organizations such as Lone Star Legal Aid, the Houston Bar Association, Houston Volunteer Lawyers, all of those groups, those advocacy groups, can be a wealth of knowledge and resources for someone who isn't particularly familiar with this process. And so whenever we start talking about learning objectives, what I want to get across today obviously isn't going to make you an expert in criminal law, but it's going to make you at least savvy enough to understand your rights and what's expected of you, as well as the police during encounters with law enforcement. So I want you to be able to explain some of the ways that someone can become entangled in the criminal justice system. And it's not just necessarily being arrested or being stopped for a traffic violation. There are other ways people can get involved in the criminal justice system. I want you all to be able to understand the ideal interaction between police and citizens. I want you all to review your own rights relating to searches and statements that you may make. I'm going to give you a brief outline of the criminal justice process. And we're going to talk briefly as well about how to choose a lawyer. Again, it's not going to make you an expert, but at least we'll give you some insight and information so you know where to look and so that you can kind of have context of where you fall if you are to get stopped or to wind up with a case. So the criminal justice system takes into account a lot of different people at a lot of different stages of the process, okay? Now, whenever I was a prosecutor, I got into law because I wanted to help people. As a prosecutor, I wanted to seek justice. I was going to dismiss the case whenever it needed to be dismissed, and I was going to put pressure on a criminal defendant whenever it was warranted. But not everyone who gets arrested is a bad person. Sometimes good people make mistakes or are in the wrong place at the wrong time. And as a criminal defense attorney, now I get to give people their lives back, to fight tooth and nail for them, to guide them through this maze. And I'm going to be evaluating every single step of the process, from the traffic stop to the arrest decision to anything and everything under the stars that you would want an attorney to take a look at. And so the criminal justice system not only incorporates the police and citizens, but we also have prosecutors. We also have judges. We have jurors. All of those people are members of our community and play an important role in that system. So, Chris, what's the best way to avoid the criminal justice system? Well, it's not just as simple as don't break the law, because there are other people just besides those people who are arrested. Now, these are all stock photos. I don't know who any of these people are, so I don't want you to think that I'm using pictures from cases or anything like that. So this is the one that we're most familiar with, are the people who are charged or arrested for offenses. But like I said, it encompasses other people. It could be victims of crime. These are the unwilling participants, the ones who didn't choose to be in that situation. Victims don't choose to go through the criminal justice system. The persons who wrong them or harm them are the ones that involuntarily place them there. And these victims ride along in the process just as much as the criminal defendants do. And sometimes even worse, because in domestic violence type cases, and the victims of these types of crimes may be worried about the person who wronged them getting out and doing the same thing. They may be worried about what's happening at each criminal trial setting and why isn't there a resolution on the case. So victims are a part of the criminal justice system as well, just as much as witnesses are. So people don't choose to be witnesses. Sometimes they're in the right or sometimes wrong place. And that makes them part of the system as well, because the police, because the prosecutors and the other attorneys involved in it would be reaching out to these people in order to obtain a background on what actually happened and get to the bottom or get to the truth of what actually occurred. And I kind of alluded to this earlier, but jurors, members of our community who are called for jury duty, are also part of the criminal justice process or part of our system. And the way you get a jury summons is either signing up to be a voter, and also going by driver's license records. So if you are within, and I'm talking specifically about Harris County, if either of those things places you within Harris County, you can expect to, at least maybe one time, get some type of summons to become a juror. And what that entails is coming down, listening to the lawyers, listening to the judge, to see if you would be a good fit for a certain case, whether or not you can be fair to someone who is on trial, or fair to the state in giving them a fair trial as well. Because there are a lot of different rights, there are a lot of different responsibilities that are flying back and forth in trials. And the best you can hope for, at least as a criminal defense lawyer, is someone who will take into account all the situations and not simply hold it against your client that they have a pending criminal case. Just because somebody is simply charged with a crime does not make them guilty of that offense. Okay, so in felony cases, we're going to be talking about 12 people who get picked. And in misdemeanor cases, we're going to be talking about 6 people who get picked for a jury. And we're talking about panels or groups of jurors who are picked out of about 30 people in misdemeanors and potentially over 60 people in a felony case. And we all know, given what we're talking about here today, that the police or law enforcement is also part of our criminal justice system. We're talking about the police on the streets, the bailiffs in our courts. Heck, we can even say that the district attorney and all the assistant DAs are part of law enforcement, part of the police process too. They have specialized knowledge, they have specialized training in the criminal process, as well as sometimes they're the only witnesses to a crime. Let's say that there's a traffic stop, and out of that traffic stop, there are criminal charges filed out of that. Well, our witness is going to be, well, just that one officer. So whenever I start talking about police, and that's going to be a common theme throughout this entire presentation, just know that as a criminal defense attorney, it doesn't mean I don't not like police or law enforcement. It's just sometimes we have a disagreement about the facts or about how the law applies to a certain set of facts. But based upon the way I was raised and what I was trained on at the DA's office, there are tremendous people in law enforcement who are full of integrity, who are full of character, and I respect the heck out of them. Okay, but simply because I disagree with them doesn't mean I don't necessarily disrespect them or not respect them. Okay, so the most common way for citizens like you and I to become involved in the criminal justice system is to be stopped on a traffic stop. And this is the most common interaction, probably not just localized in Houston and Harris County, but across the nation. Our police are trained that they are to enforce the laws. And one of the laws that everyone has to abide by on a daily basis is we have to abide by the transportation code, those traffic safety laws that keep me safe, my daughter safe, my wife safe, you safe, as well as the police safe. we have to abide by that common set of rules. So we're talking about speeding, using your blinkers, making sure your window tint isn't too dark. The law allows police officers to make contact with a person, meaning pull them over with their lights, their sirens, their marked patrol units, issue citations if it justifies it, detain people for further investigation, or potentially arrest them. And fun fact, well, maybe not so fun fact, here in Texas, there are a couple things you actually cannot be arrested for. One of those is speeding. You cannot be arrested for the offense of speeding, and you cannot be arrested for the offense of open container. Everything else here in Texas is fair game. If you don't use your blinker, you could go to jail. If you don't stop at a stop sign, you could go to jail. If your registration is out, you could go to jail. Okay, so abide by the rules and play nice. Okay, so what stops the police from just going about willy-nilly, coming into contact with people or arresting people or busting into people's houses is this little thing called the Fourth Amendment. Okay, and that's the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, effects, against any unreasonable searches and any unreasonable seizures. Okay, and that the amendment says that this shall not be violated. Okay, this also deals with warrants for arrest of people or the search of certain places, and peace officers have to swear to a judge that there are all these different facts that amount to something called probable cause, or enough evidence or enough information in order to bust in on someone's life, in order to invade their homes or place them under arrest and take them down to the jail. And this is the fine line between government intrusion on our lives. Okay, and so it's this standard of probable cause, also reasonable suspicion, that the police have to meet in order to have that intrusion on our lives. And if you've ever been a juror on a case, you'll see attorneys sometimes use this little scale. And this is how much evidence are we actually talking about? Okay, and so at the very bottom, we're talking about no evidence. And based upon the way our laws are written and interpreted, a person has to be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, or the state has to prove their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's up here up at the top, that if the state proves their case beyond a reasonable doubt, that's whenever someone can be found guilty. The halfway point, if you think of it kind of like a football field, okay, if you get up to about the 50-yard line, we're talking about the preponderance of the evidence. What that means is that's the standard that is used in civil cases. So if we were fighting over a pile of money, whoever gets to the just over the 50-yard line would get that pile of money. Okay, but that's not the standard that we use in criminal law. Okay, so the reasonable suspicion and the probable cause standards that we were talking about in order to either detain someone or arrest them or to search them are even below that 50%. And we'll talk about that more later on. But back to traffic stops. One of the most basic reasons you can come into contact, if you've traveled down any of our highways, any of our streets, you've probably gone over the speed limit. Okay, now again, you can't be arrested for that, so that's good news. But the police can actually make contact with you, pull you over, and investigate that, and they can issue a citation, and you'd have to pay for that if you didn't want to take it to trial. Okay. What about running or rolling stop signs and stoplights? Well, that's an arrestable offense. It's an offense that you can be stopped for. Okay, so again, this goes back to living in a community and dealing with laws that make us safe, because the safety factor of that is if you run a red light or you run a stop sign, there's a potential for causing an accident and jeopardizing someone else's safety. Okay, but here's what you need to know about stop signs, just as a little bit of insider knowledge. You are required to stop at the stop line, okay? If there's not a stop line, then you can pull up to the edge of the intersection, okay? That's how those laws are interpreted. Some police don't know that, but unfortunately, Later on, they will learn if you take it to trial and we have to litigate whether or not you actually ran a stop sign, rolled a stop sign, or blew through a red light, okay? What about staying in your lane? A lot of people think that just weaving in and out of your lane is a reason that the police can come and stop you. That's not necessarily true. If you leave your lane and it is unsafe, well, that's whenever the police can stop you, or at least that's whenever they should stop you. Same thing with using your blinkers. Anytime you change lanes or make a turn or anything like that, use your turn signal, use your blinkers. Not only is that a courtesy for the other members of your community, I know the rule in Houston is as soon as you see someone turn on their blinker, someone immediately starts speeding up and doesn't let you over, but it's the courtesy of it. It's the following the law thing. And that's what we're trying to prevent, is that your interaction with the police, just so that we don't have any sour interactions, okay? Same thing with turning. Don't make wide turns. What about equipment violations? Well, your car has to be in good working order in order to be out on the roadway. So as long as it's in good working order, you shouldn't have any interactions with the police. And what I mean by that is your registration sticker should be up to date. Your headlights should be on whenever required. Both brake lights should be working, as well as your tail lights, and even that little top stop light at the rear of your vehicle that turns on whenever you press on the brakes. That's called the Cyclops light. That's also required. And so police are trained to look for these types of things in order to make contact to see if there's anything else going on besides that, especially whenever it comes to your headlights being off whenever they should be on. That may be an indicator that somebody's impaired or intoxicated and would give an officer additional reason to investigate what's going on. And it doesn't necessarily have to be breaking the law in order for police to make contact with you or to pull you over. They can exercise something called community caretaking, which is pretty much just checking in on you. Okay. An example of that would be if the police pulled up behind you and turned on their lights because maybe you were passed out on the side of the road. They want to check on your safety to see if you need any assistance. Okay. And so even without a traffic violation, even without an accident, they still have the ability to come up and speak with you to investigate further under the right circumstances. But what's going to be important is whether or not this was reasonable. And it's going to be up to a judge to see whether or not that is a reasonable thing for them to do. And what we're going to be taking a look at is whether or not that officer was motivated in order to help you out, or if he was trying to investigate some type of crime. And whenever we talk about reasonable, we're going to be talking about, well, how much distress is a person in? Okay, and somebody who's passed out may not be in very much distress, but they may be alone. They may be at a location that is not conducive to obtaining help. They may not have other people around. Are we talking about a road that is off kind of the beaten path? Or are we talking about a busy business center or a busy road? And to what extent the person who is passed out, who needed help, presented a danger to themselves or others. So really, if this police officer didn't come along, what was probably or what may have been the outcome? Do we think that they could have been carjacked? Do we think that they would have needed medical assistance? And that's for a judge to decide. But even though someone doesn't commit a traffic violation, that doesn't mean that the police can't make contact with them. Okay, so big question, what do I do if I get pulled over? The best thing I can tell you to do is to comply. Comply with it, because only bad things happen if you don't comply with an officer in a marked police unit, whether that's the sheriff's deputy, a constable deputy, or HPD. If they are behind you with lights and sirens in that marked patrol unit, the best thing I can tell you to do is comply, even if you don't think it's justified, okay? Litigated in court, not on the roadside, okay? And so there are some simple steps that everyone should follow in order to have the best possible interaction with police. And this is for police, and this is also for citizens, because at the end of the day, everyone is scared. the person being pulled over is scared. They're asking themselves, am I going to be treated fairly? Am I going to be going to jail? Are they going to look in my trunk and see that thing I don't want anyone else to see? Are they going to do that? And at the same time, after speaking with officers on this side and on the other side, police are always on alert. And I don't know if I want to call it being scared, but they're apprehensive. They have a reason to be distrustful of the public sometimes. And their number one concern, what they are trained on at the academy, is for officer safety. You read through enough of these reports, and they justify so much of what they did in terms of searches, in terms of how they went about their investigations. It's because of officer safety. And that's their justification used for a lot of different things. Because at the end of the day, they have a dangerous job with potentially dangerous consequences if things don't go right. And they deal with some of the most dangerous people. I could not do their job. I don't have the stomach for it. And there was just something very brave and respectable about what they do, okay? And they never know what they're going to encounter. And so if we kind of follow a template or a cookie cutter of what they are expecting from us, then we can minimize any kind of negative interactions that we do have with them. So first things first, after you have made the decision to comply, you should slow down. By slowing down, you have signaled to that officer that one, you see him, and two, you are going to comply. And so it also makes it easier to come to a complete stop. Can't come to a complete stop if you don't slow down, okay? Next thing I would say to do, you need to indicate some type of signal of the direction you're traveling. If you don't indicate where you're going, whether you are on the shoulder or you are pulling off the freeway or pulling into a parking lot, the officer is going to think that you are going to keep going. So make some type of indication through your car's lights to make sure that you are signaling to this officer that you are going to comply. Okay. Sometimes people even put on their hazard lights to make sure that the officer understands that they are going to comply. Next thing to do is obviously come to a stop. But where do I come to a stop? Should I stop on the freeway? Should I get off the freeway? Should I pull into a parking lot? Should I stop in a moving lane of traffic? Well, the answer to that last one is no. Don't stop in a moving lane of traffic. That's one of the most dangerous things that you can do. Okay. Having been in the Vehicular Crimes Division at the DA's office, where I was prosecuting any type of fatality that involved speed, negligent drivers, reckless drivers, intoxicated drivers, I can tell you one of the worst things that you can do for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for the officer that's involved in the stop is to stop in a moving lane of traffic. Just don't do it. The roads are already unsafe as it is. You don't need to be adding to that. So my best recommendation obviously is to pull off the freeway if you are able to. It's safer for you and it's safer for the officer. And once that officer exits his car or her car, it'll be a lot safer for that kind of roadside interaction as well. If you can't pull off into a parking lot, try a side street or somewhere away from traffic. If it's nighttime, look for somewhere that's well lit. I understand that sometimes that's not necessarily available to you, but it at least cuts down on any type of inability to see into your vehicle or things like that. Something that makes the officer less scared of what's going on inside the car. So another recommendation, obviously, have your hands on the wheel. If officers can't see your hands whenever they approach your vehicle, they're going to be wondering in the back of their head, well, where are his hands? What are they doing? What are they holding? Is it a weapon? Should I be concerned about this? And so, again, calling into light that rule number one for officers, they are looking out for their own safety. Another recommendation I have is to turn on the overhead lights. Maybe even turn your car off, especially if it's taking you a little bit in order to pull over. Because the more time that you are rolling down the street, the more the officer may think that you didn't have an intent to stop your vehicle, that you were evading. And so by turning off your vehicle, you have indicated to that police officer that you're not going to be a flight risk, that you're not going to be at risk for hurting him or her if you drive off. It puts them a whole lot more at ease. Finally, wait. Wait for the officer to get out and to approach your vehicle. Let the officer come to you. Because what it looks like if you get out, you are seen as the aggressor. You are seen as someone who wants to be combative. You are seen as someone who wants to be disruptive or wants to hide something inside their vehicle. And you are going to be treated as the aggressor. That puts the officers on alert. That may lead to them placing their hand on their weapon, on their taser, or pulling out their weapon, or pulling out their taser, which could put you or them or any other bystander in jeopardy. And what we're looking to do is we're showing respect, even though we may not necessarily agree with the officer about what's going on, but we are showing them the respect for the situation that we are in. Just wait, even if you're upset. Okay, because the officer, while he or she is in their patrol unit, is running your license plate to see if it's stolen, to see if it's been involved in any crimes, and whether or not that officer should be on alert any further. And so once the officer walks up to your vehicle, we all know what's happening. We know that the officer is taking his or her flashlight, looking inside the vehicle, checking to see how many people there are, whether or not they can see any weapons, whether or not they can see any contraband, such as drugs or anything like that. We also know that the first question that the officer is going to ask, do you know why I pulled you over? Let's pause right there and talk about something called the Fifth Amendment, okay? From this point on, anything that you say to that police officer can be used against you. By asking you, do you know why I pulled you over? And you answering, well, it's because I was speeding, or it's, I almost hit that car, or you know what, I drifted onto the shoulder. You have solidified the reason and justified the officer pulling you over. Anything you say that can be used against you, because the Fifth Amendment right, or Fifth Amendment protections, is the right against self-incrimination, that no person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against themselves. And so whenever we talk about police questioning, sometimes police ask questions not to be your friend, but because they are gathering evidence. And so you have to know the reason that they are asking these questions. You know, where are you coming from? Where are you going? Have you been drinking? Do you have anything illegal in the car? Do you have any weapons in the car? They are gathering information. And I don't want you to think that police are being nefarious or evil or mean-spirited or anything like that. They're doing their job. Their job is to enforce the law, and this is part of that job. But just because it is their job to ask those questions, it is not your job to answer them. Do you have to talk to the police? No, you do not. You do not have to answer any of their questions, okay? And so that can protect you, especially in a situation where your answers may be incriminatory, okay? Excuse me, incriminating. You can politely refuse to answer any of those questions, but simply because you refuse to answer those questions doesn't necessarily they're going to overlook your refusal, even your polite refusal to answer those questions. What you do need to do, though, if you get pulled over, is to verify your identity. If a police officer pulls you over on a traffic violation, you have a duty, if he asks you, to turn over your driver's license. It is the law to possess your driver's license, and it is the law to provide proof of financial responsibility. Okay, if you can't provide a driver's license, maybe you can provide your name and date of birth. Failure to provide that information to an officer could be the basis of your arrest. And based upon watching a bunch of YouTube videos, TikTok videos, Facebook videos, a lot of people film their interactions with the police. They try and outsmart and outlawyer police on the roadside. And it never goes that well for them. Sure, it makes for great entertainment sometimes, but we all know what happens at the end. That person gets arrested, and everything that that person did and they said and how uncooperative that they were winds up in a report and being used against them. Be mindful of your interaction with the police, because anything that you say and anything that you do can and will be used against you. Not to mention that it's all going to be on video as well from the police officer's standpoint as well. A lot of people ask me, since I do a bunch of DWI defense, what should I do if I've been drinking? Things get a little tricky here. I had a case today where an officer pulled somebody over for no blinker while he was making a turn. Got pulled over. There was nothing to indicate that he was intoxicated. Didn't have slurred speech, didn't have those red, glassy, bloodshot eyes, no odor of alcohol, only an admission that he had been drinking. He was arrested for that. Just know that if you admit to it, there's going to be a further investigation. Really, you have three choices. You can admit, but you're going to be providing evidence against yourself, and you should be looking forward to an investigation into whether or not you were intoxicated. You can deny it, which may be the truth, it may be a lie, but either way, an officer may see that as you attempting to hide evidence, especially if there is that odor, if there is that weaving, if there is that slurred speech. Okay, so it's going to be based upon your own personal decision. And since we're talking about driving while intoxicated, part of my job as a lawyer is getting myth versus reality kind of sorted out, especially whenever it comes to the general public and speaking with jurors. And so going out, plan a sober ride, drink, drive, go to jail. I am for people following the law. I don't want people to drive while intoxicated, but this is flat marketing versus what the law actually shows, okay? I'm not encouraging anybody to break the law. I want people to be safe, just like I told you earlier. I'm riding on these roads just like you are. I don't want anybody to do anything safe. But what the law allows and what the law says you can do, it says that responsible adults can consume alcohol and drive a vehicle so long as they are not above the legal limit, and that alcohol is not affecting them. Okay, the law isn't if you drink any amount of alcohol, you will go and get behind the wheel, you will go to jail. Okay, I just want to inform people of what the law actually is so that they can live within the boundaries of what the law is. Same thing with field sobriety tests. You do not have to participate in field sobriety testing. That is evidence, again, that can be used against you, no matter what the results of those tests are. Okay, so going back to those Fourth Amendment protections, how can the police search you? How can they search your vehicle? How can they search your home? How can they search your person? The law protects against unreasonable searches and seizures, but how do they get to that point where they're actually searching you? Okay, there are three ways that an officer can search something generally. Okay, one is that you could provide consent to search. If an officer says, hey, do you mind if I search your vehicle? And you say yes, you have provided that officer consent or permission to search that place. So we're talking about your car, we're talking about your purse, we're talking about your glove box, your trunk, your cell phone, drawing blood from you, searching your home, wherever. Okay, if you give them permission, you're allowing them to go and search for contraband, for illegal things. And it's very hard, but for them, you saying that you were coerced into providing consent to get rid of any evidence that they find against you, okay? Now, they can also search you, your person, your car without a warrant sometimes. So most of the time they will get a warrant unless there is consent or if there's an exception, okay? And so what the exceptions are, if they have probable cause, again, that level of evidence to believe that a crime has been committed, if you have been arrested and they are searching for evidence of the crime that you committed, if they are conducting an inventory, say, of your vehicle, after they have arrested you and placed you in the back of their patrol car. If you go to jail, they can search you at the jail. And that's a very systematic thing because we don't want people bringing guns, knives, drugs, or any other contraband into the jail. You could also say some things about schools, but that's an entirely different animal of who can search, what they can search, and things like that. And then the final way that they can get justification for searching your property or your person is this notion of a search warrant. That goes back to the Fourth Amendment principles we talked about earlier. If the officer can provide a neutral and detached magistrate enough evidence and swear to it, the judge can issue a warrant authorizing a nurse to draw blood, or a person to search, or excuse me, a police officer to search a home, or anything like that. So there are ways around it if you do not consent. Okay. So what about this? Can they ask me to get out of my car and search me? And under what we've learned so far, the number one rule again is that officer safety. And so you bet they can. You bet they can ask you to get out of the car, to pat you down, to frisk you. Okay. This is if they can articulate that you may have weapons, or you could be a danger to them. And you could be the subject of something called a pat down search. Okay. And so what the officer is doing is very briefly searching on the outside of your clothes, patting you down to see whether or not he can feel any type of weapon, say as a firearm or a knife or a club or anything like that, that could be a danger to that officer. And so if he can immediately identify it as a weapon or even contraband, say a pipe that's used to smoke drugs, an officer can then reach into a person's pocket or reach into a person's waistband and remove that. Okay. And so this is a very limited, a very quick, fast search where they're looking for things that could hurt them, poke them, stick them, anything like that. Okay. And so it's not a systematic search, or one that involves a lot of looking into nooks and crannies and things like that. What about when police can search my car? Well, hopefully, if they do search your car, they find these very cute, adorable dogs back there, and there's nothing illegal or improper in your vehicle after that. Okay, that's the best case scenario. Okay, so when can they search your car? Well, if you give them consent to search, obviously they can search your vehicle. They can search your vehicle without a warrant if they have probable cause to believe that a crime has been committed. Well, how do they do that? Well, if there's the smell of drugs in the car, say burnt marijuana, fresh marijuana, anything like that. So even though that there are a number of diversion programs for the prosecution of marijuana right now, that still doesn't mean that it isn't against the law. It can still be a valid reason for an officer to search someone's vehicle in search of more drugs. They can do it as a search incident to your arrest. They can look for additional evidence of you committing that crime. They can also take an inventory of your car after they have arrested you and are towing your vehicle, because the basic premise is they don't want you to say that something was in your car when it wasn't, and that you accuse them of stealing something, or the tow truck company of stealing something out of your vehicle. So those are the typical ways in which someone or a police officer can search your vehicle. But your home is an entirely different story. And there's a lot of law on this, but just know this: your home is sacred. It is where the most private things in your life happen. And it's where you go to lay your head down to sleep at night. All of your belongings are there. It's where you live. And that there are so many protections for your home that the basic premise is that officers have to have a warrant to enter someone's home, except for a number of limited exceptions. And this doesn't apply so much to a car, because a car can move and evidence can be gone after that. Okay, so same thing with breath tests and blood tests. You have to consent to do these things, but at the same time, you can refuse to give those things. A lot of people ask, should I take the breath test? Should I take the blood test? Should I refuse? Okay, all valid questions. And it's going to be based upon a person's own individual choice and their own individual situation. There are drawbacks for both. Taking a breath test, officers get a result more immediately. Taking a blood test, there is a little bit of a delay, but people find a blood test more accurate. And that leads us to the last thing, should I refuse? Well, even if you refuse, an officer still has the ability to obtain that search warrant. And we talk a lot about here in Harris County of no refusal, okay? That if you refuse, someone will get a warrant for your blood, and that there are police officers, DAs, and judges on standby 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year in order to write these warrants to obtain people's blood. And so it's not just on no refusal weekends or on holidays. It's a 24/7 operation here in Harris County, at least. Okay. So just know that they, one way or the other, they will obtain your blood if they want to. A lot of people come into my office and they say, Chris, you know what? I have the golden ticket. I have my get out of jail free card. They didn't read me my rights. Well, that's not necessarily your get out of jail free card. Okay, it doesn't throw out your arrest. What it does, though, is it invalidates any statements that you made after you were arrested. Okay, it doesn't invalidate anything before that point, but only applies to the point that you were arrested, you were not read your rights, and you were asked questions that incriminated you. And everybody knows you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to have a lawyer. If one can't be provided, if you can't afford one, one would be provided to you. All of these things are things that people are told, or at least should be told, after they are arrested, if the police want to use their statements against them. So we've already gone through the system of having been stopped, having been arrested, and now we get into the actual criminal case in front of a criminal judge, a criminal prosecutor with criminal consequences. Okay, so here's how it works. How did we get here and what should we expect? Well, again, there's a traffic stop. Here in Harris County, after the traffic stop and the police obtain evidence that you've done something wrong that warrants you being arrested, they will reach out to the district attorney, and one of those prosecutors will approve charges or accept charges for a person who is alleged to have committed a crime. That person will be taken down to the county jail, which is downtown. It's called the Joint Processing Center. Okay, where they will be fingerprinted, they will be photographed. So that's where the mugshot comes from. They will see a judge. Here in Harris County, you can see a judge via television screen. And so top left corner would be the prosecutor reading the bare bones facts of what happened. The screen up here on the right would be the accused person who's been taken to jail. Bottom left corner is going to be the magistrate, who's determining whether or not there's enough evidence for the state to proceed. After that, a bond will be set. Here in Harris County, we deal with 3 different kinds of bond. A surety bond, where you have to put down money in order to get out of jail. Personal recognizance bond, or a PR bond, meaning the same thing as a general order bond, where you pretty much get out on your scout's honor that you're going to come back. Okay, you'll be assigned a court, a case number, and then a date to come back. And it typically takes about 12 to 48 hours in order to be booked into the jail and then arrested on one of these things. And that YMMV is your mileage may vary. Okay. So bail and bail bonds. A lot of news has been happening right now about the amount of bail for certain people who are charged with crimes, and whether or not somebody should be denied bail. Under the Texas Constitution, there are only a few ways in which somebody can be denied bail or held at 0 bond, and said that, you know what, no amount of money, Mr. Accused, will get you out of jail. And it's only for these particular reasons. If a person is charged with capital murder, Say somebody murders or is alleged to have murdered a police officer. That would be a situation where they can be denied bail. If they are habitual felons, meaning they've been to the penitentiary twice before, and this is their third strike, they can be held without bail. If they are on bond for an indicted felony and they pick up a new law violation, if this new crime involves a deadly weapon and they've been to prison before, or if they are currently charged with a violent or sexual offense while on supervision for a felony. Okay, so let's talk about the free bonds that people can make. So a lot of litigation has been happening here recently regarding a federal lawsuit. A federal lawsuit was brought against the county, and what the allegation was is that persons who cannot afford bail, who cannot afford to make bond, were being held unnecessarily based upon their status as indigent or impoverished, or simply because they didn't have enough money, and that was coercing them or making a situation in which they were pleading guilty to things they may not have done just in order to get out of jail. And so a lawsuit was successful in obtaining a way for persons who may not make that much money to get out of jail without providing little to no funds at all. This is different than a surety bond, which is, let's say the judge sets your bond at $100,000. And typically what happens is you would be asked to provide about 10%. You would have to come up with $10,000, not the full $100,000. But you would get with a bondsman, you would pay that $10,000 to, and they would put up the rest of the $90,000. And that would ensure that you would come back to court, okay? There was ongoing talks right now that the amount being charged by these bondsmen is typically less than that 10%. And so it's messing around with the way judges set bonds. And so these bondsmen sometimes are charging less than 10%. And so people are getting out of jail on a $100,000 bond for, say, a couple $100. That's an extreme situation, but that's what's happening right now. Okay, and that's that 10% that we were talking about. And so that there are talks going on with the city, as well as at the county commissioner's court, about what to do about this situation. Just so if you hear about anything like that in the media, you know what they're talking about. And so all these court processes and what we've talked about so far can be a maze if you haven't been there, if you haven't done it before, because not everybody, gets into trouble. Not everybody, is lucky enough, or I guess unlucky enough, to have to know someone who's gone through that. So just know that Lone Star Legal Aid, the Houston Volunteer Lawyers, all of those organizations are there to help you out. But, whenever it boils down to it, whenever we talk about the criminal justice system, it's based upon the premise that people are presumed innocent. I hear a lot of people say that innocent until proven guilty. Well, that doesn't necessarily make sense, because it means that eventually someone is going to be found guilty. Okay, so it's innocent unless the state proves them guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So there are three things that you need to remember. Everybody in the system starts off innocent. They're presumed innocent. Okay, and if the state doesn't provide any evidence against them, they are not guilty. Okay, we can't sit here and just think that he is guilty of something or she is guilty of something just because they are sitting there. The other thing that they have to realize, the jurors have to realize, the public has to realize, that the burden of proof is always on the state. The defense has nothing to prove. The defendant has nothing to prove. And then that burden of proof never shifts. It is always on the state, okay? And again, it goes back to those levels of proof that we were talking about earlier. If the state can prove someone's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, then that person can be found guilty under those set of facts. If there is reasonable doubt, a reasonable doubt, if the state only proves clear and convincing evidence or a preponderance of the evidence, or only that there was probable cause, then a jury should find them not guilty as they are required to by law. Okay. And so this stair-step example is a great example, kind of the visualization of the different standards of proof or different evidence that is needed to take away someone's life, to take away someone's liberty. And even though someone may not be sent off to prison for, say, a misdemeanor case, their lives are surely affected by simply being charged. And if they are convicted of a crime, their lives can be affected as well. They could be denied loans, they could be denied housing, they could be denied certain jobs, so that there is a lot on the line whenever it comes to the state proving someone's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Because at the end of the day, a jury may find someone not guilty, or the case may be dismissed. And there was a presentation a few weeks ago about expunctions and non-disclosures. And so it's important to know that even though a case may be dismissed or someone's acquitted by a jury, criminal charges don't simply fall off of someone's record. There is no time period that takes away someone's criminal history from being on their record. Something will always be on there unless they go through this expunction or erasing process, or what the non-disclosure process is sealing their record from the general public. Someone's record will always be with them. And so that's why it's important to know what you're getting into in terms of hiring a lawyer and going through the process. So if you get arrested, what do? Well, if you're on the jail phone, don't talk about the case on the phone, okay? Those calls are recorded. And again, you'd be giving evidence against yourself. Simply tell the person that you call where you are. They can begin the bonding process from there. So first question that your friends and family should be asking you isn't what happened. You shouldn't be talking about what happened on the phone. They should be asking, where are you? We'll talk about it whenever we get out, okay? And so like we were talking about, everybody gets sent to this joint processing center. Anybody who is arrested for a Class B misdemeanor or higher is going to this joint processing center, okay? And they will be released from there. And that address is 700 North San Jacinto. If you are wondering whether or not somebody is in jail currently, you can get on the sheriff's office website and search them by first name, last name, date of birth, their social, or this sheriff's office number, the SPIN number, SPN, okay? That's the unique identifier that everybody in Harris County gets instead of their name and date of birth. So after somebody gets out, the first thing that should happen is you should seek out counsel. You can't do this thing alone. So if you need additional resources, again, see Lone Star Legal Aid, Houston Volunteer Lawyers Association, the Houston Bar Association, okay? Save the what happened for the lawyer's office. And the things that I can tell you about hiring the criminal defense lawyers, sit down and meet with the person that you want to hire in person. Things have gotten very impersonal for a lot of different reasons, COVID being one of them. But this person you are going to be entrusting with your future, with your life, your liberty. Sit down, meet with them in person, see if this is the kind of person that you want to go into business with or trust your life and liberty with. Okay, be wary of any specific outcomes that they guarantee. No lawyer is going to be able to guarantee a certain outcome. It's not the right thing. It's not the ethical thing. Okay, if lawyers are promising you that they are going to get their case dismissed, that your case dismissed, they're probably lying to you. They're probably telling you something just to get your business. You should get up and walk out. They do not have your best interest in hand. You should ask about what the fee is going to be. Okay. In the criminal law world, people don't really work on hourly rates. That's something that you would see for a family law attorney or something like that. Most criminal defense lawyers act on a flat fee, meaning that we've sized up the situation. We think it's going to cost X number of dollars for the entire process. And then the final thing is get the agreement in writing. This is what attorneys should be doing, but not every attorney is doing it, unfortunately. A written agreement not only protects the lawyer, but it also protects you. You know what your rights and your responsibilities are under the agreement. And that fee is not going to change. What that includes is not going to change. Okay. So how do you choose a good lawyer? Okay. Now that you've done your research via Google or getting recommendations, you're going to be looking for someone that's reputable, obviously, someone who has a good track record of providing great service to their clients. You're going to be looking at their level of expertise in the field. Are they board certified? Have they been doing this their entire lives or their entire careers? What type of background or what type of specialized knowledge do they have as it relates to a criminal law issue? I'm not going to hire a family law attorney to do a criminal law issue, only because their expertise and their experience will be somewhere else. And maybe they don't know all of the rules in the criminal arena. You know, have they been asked to speak by other organizations? Do they regularly speak? And that really goes to, do other lawyers in the community trust them? And then the final thing is, do you trust them? Are you comfortable with the type of person that they are, what they've presented you? How are they going to help you? Because really, you are going to be spending the next couple months with this person, and this person is going to be your advisor, your advocate, your negotiator, your intermediary, and he's going to be the one evaluating your case. Do you trust this person? Are you comfortable with this person helping you out? Because lawyers are there to help you out through this embarrassing time of your life that has the potential to change really the path or the course that your life has because of this one criminal charge. Just know that lawyers are here to help. All of those organizations I've been talking about are there to help you. It's what we do. I got into this job to make a difference, to help people. And I really hope that having these little nuggets of information can help you out through a rough spot, or at least you can help out other people of which direction to go. Because at the end of the day, helping others is what we do. And if I can ever help you out, please let me know. My contact information is below. You can reach me via phone or email. So I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to any questions that you guys have later on.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris. We are going to now move on into Miss Crystal.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, I was on mute still. 1 second. Let me pull up my.
Again, while she's doing that, if you guys do have any questions, please feel free to type those into the chat and we can read those out, or you can wait and unmute yourself or raise your hand and we'll call on you so that you can ask the questions directly. You're on mute again, Crystal.
Sorry, I'm just setting up the PowerPoint. I had this problem last time. Share.
Okay.
Perfect. Chris went over a lot of things very thoroughly, so some of it I'm not going to highlight as much. My name is Crystal Okorafor, and I'm the Deputy Inspector General of the Office of Policing Reform and Accountability. I'm just going to highlight some of the things about knowing your rights and contact with the criminal justice system or police in general. So one of the questions, one of the things I think we should highlight is questions about immigration. I think it's very important that you know that you have the right to remain silent and you don't have to discuss your immigration status. This is different, of course, if you're going through the police, or not going through the police, if you're going through the airport and things like that. But in a regular detention or arrest, you don't have to answer questions about your citizenship with the officers initially. You don't have to tell them what city you were born in or what country or anything like that. But I would encourage everyone never to lie about their citizenship or fake documents. If you do have your papers on you, bring them with you if you're over the age of 18 to document things, but you definitely don't want to fake anything because that's a criminal charge in itself. One of the things I want to talk about is what's a casual conversation with a police officer. It's not every time that you have interactions with a police officer is it a situation where you're under detention or arrest or anything like that. It just can be a casual conversation. Maybe if you're, in the mall and they're walking by and they see you and they start talking to you, you can ask, am I free to leave? If you're free to leave, then you can walk off. I would never run away from the police, but you're able to walk off. You're able to remain silent. You don't have to answer any questions or provide any additional information if it's just a casual conversation with an officer and they don't believe you have committed any kind of crime or anything of that nature. And it's key to just ask, am I free to leave? If you're free to leave, then you can just walk away. Chris kind of talked about being stopped by the police. If you're stopped by the police in public, you have the right to remain silent. And some of these, your right to remain silent is always there, no matter what the situation is. If you're arrested, you have a right to an attorney. And then also you can refuse to
In a book, you can be anything. I spied
You can
all
push
over the
your-
world. I climbed the Eiffel Tower. Whatever you do, it's gonna be.
Hold on for just a second.
Okay, I don't know what that was. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, that was weird.
Sounds like somebody watching something else on another.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me go back to my screen.
First tonight, breaking news. Houston police released body cam footage showing a deadly shooting in North Houston earlier this month.
Okay.
Is there an audio attached to the presentation?
No, there's not. I'm not sure what's going on. So we'll just keep going from there. Next step is if you're stopped by the police in your car. If you're stopped by the police in your car, you want to definitely pull over as quickly as possible, but you want to make sure it's in a safe location. I suggest that if you're, if it's nighttime or something like that, and you don't find somewhere safe to stop right in your immediate vicinity, put on your blinkers or hazards or something like that, just so that you can let the officer know that you are going to pull over and you're not evading from him or her at that time. Upon the request, you should show the police officers your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. You can consent to a search, or you can refuse to consent to a search of your vehicle. Officers are, unless they have probable cause, they can ask to search your vehicle, but if they don't have any probable cause to search your vehicle, then they would have to get a search warrant. So you don't have to allow someone to search your vehicle or your person just because they ask. Now, if there's, evidence or the police believe that a crime has been committed and they have evidence of that, like probable cause, then they can search the vehicle. Both the driver and the passengers have the right to remain silent. If you're arrested by the police, you have a right to an attorney. You can be then searched, you and your belongings. Just when you aren't under arrest, they can do a frisk. And so a frisk is just a simple pat down, but once you're under arrest, they can search you. That search you can request to be done by someone of the same gender as you or gender that you identify with. Your rights can be evoked at any time. So if initially you decide you want to start talking and then you decide you don't want to talk anymore, you can change that. So your right to attorney starts at that moment, but you can change your mind on whether you want to talk or not. And so if you decide halfway through a conversation you would like to ask for an attorney, then you can say that. And it just make sure you speak up and tell them once you decide you want an attorney, tell them, be very clear in that stance and say that I would like to, I don't want to answer any more questions until I have an attorney present. And once you say that, then they can't continue to talk to you. Also remember that anything you say will be used against you. So, for example, for a speeding ticket, when you're talking to an officer about a speeding ticket, they are taking notes about, what you say or where you're going and things like that. And then subsequently, if you decide to fight your ticket, they're going to use that against you and tell you, to prove that it was in fact you and why you were speeding if you gave a reasonable explanation or any of that. Same thing occurs with any kind of a case. So if they presumed you have, committed a murder, they might ask you, hey, where are we coming from on that night? And if you answer the question, it can and will be used against you. The officer does not have to tell you the reason for your arrest. This is counterintuitive to everything that we think, what's happening on TV. They do not have to tell you what you have been arrested for. And they're also not obligated to tell you your rights upon request. Upon arrest, sorry, not upon request. And so they don't have to tell you having a right to attorney. Now, if they start to do an interview or something like that, they do have to read you your rights, but just upon arresting you, they don't have to. Most of them will, but they do not have to. So one of the other things I think is important is when the police are involved, because maybe there's a situation where you call 911. For example, if someone broke into your home, you've called 911. Once you call 911, the officers are coming to your home to do an investigation. And it doesn't matter what you think, like if you call 911 because someone broke into your home, but while you're investigating that, they see, a kilo of cocaine in your home, they can arrest you for that kilo of cocaine, even though that you called them out to investigate your burglary because someone broke into your home. So once the police are involved in a situation, you are no longer in control of that outcome. You won't determine what charges or who's arrested or anything like that. That is determined by the police department and also by the district attorney's office. Additionally, you won't, once charges are filed, you do not have any control over if the case gets dismissed or not, or the outcome. If they put someone in jail, they'll ask for your, what you would like to see happen. But once law enforcement is involved, they take control of the case and it's no longer in your hands. And so be mindful of that situation. I know when I was a prosecutor, they were like, oh, I just called the police because I wanted somebody to get them out the house. Well, once you call the police, they're going to do their job, which is to investigate the situation. And if there's something criminal that you might have been doing too, once they're involved, they're involved. And I think it's very important to talk about your responsibilities when you're interacting with the police. We talk a lot about what their responsibilities are, but we also have responsibilities. So one of the key things I think that we should discuss is staying calm. Even no matter what the situation is, if you stay calm, then it keeps everything in a very calm manner. Do not run. Once you run, it becomes a much more hostile situation. And so we want to always be mindful of that because it is not a situation we want to put ourselves in. Do not lie, be very truthful or honest, or don't say anything at all. You have the right to remain silent for a reason. So you don't want to incriminate yourself by lying. Keep your hands where the officers can see them. And also remember all the details. Remember the officer's name, his badge, any witnesses that you might observe or anything like that. And you want to always be respectful because if we show respect to others, then they'll respect us back. So I think it's important to be mindful of that. Additionally, police misconduct cannot be challenged on the street. So if an officer is doing wrong, challenging it on the street will not result in anything positive for anyone in that situation. The best way to challenge when the police officer has done something wrong is to remain calm and handle the situation once you are in a position of safety. You can file a complaint through my office. You can file a complaint with the ACLU. You can hire a civil attorney to, fight whatever's happened. The sheriff's office, any of the different agencies. Through my office, you can file a complaint on our website. You can file a complaint by emailing. You can file in mailing, in person, the phone number, or contacting the Houston Police Department, Internal Affairs Department. I just think it's so important that we remember to challenge the police off the street. On the street, it's not a fair fight. So that's all I wanted to add because Chris was so thorough in his conversation.
Thank you so much. You both were very, very thorough. And Chris, you're excellent because there are so many questions that I actually had that you actually answered. And Crystal, thank you so much for coming back and giving us some further information. Are there any questions right now that anyone would like to unmute themselves and ask? Ms. Nia, do you have some questions yourself?
Oh, I have plenty, but Mr. Paul Benz just opened or just raised his hand. So please feel free to go ahead and ask because I have a lot. So go right ahead.
Thank you. Just one question, and maybe I misheard, but Chris was going through some things about, I believe it was stopping in an alcohol charge. And he said there are 3 things you can do. 1, admit to it. 2, refuse, but there wasn't the 3rd one, or I missed it. And, like I said, maybe I misheard, but I recall him saying there were 3 things.
Yep. So you can either admit to drinking, so kind of providing evidence against yourself. You could refuse to answer the officer's question, or you could deny it, deny having consumed alcohol. So, but at the end of the day, if the officer smells alcohol, he may believe that you are lying, and things may get worse for you because he or she is going to think that you're lying or that you are trying to hide something. Okay. So it's kind of a personal decision of whether or not you want to cooperate with those police questions in that investigation.
And just a follow-up, if I could, those are nice, neat categories: admit, deny, and then refuse. But what about just keeping silent or saying, I'd like to talk to an attorney, which isn't really any of those?
Right. Well, I think that would it kind of falls into the neat category of just not answering or refusing to answer. So exercising your Fifth Amendment rights, but also, being respectful. And I think you hit the nail right on the head, Paul, is that you can respectfully decline to answer questions. And but the thing about requesting an attorney, at that point in the investigation, there is no legal necessity for them to provide you a lawyer at that time or allow you to speak with an attorney on the roadside. Unfortunately, that right doesn't accrue until later on, until whenever the criminal charges are pending against you. So you don't have the benefit of a phone a friend on the roadside.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Yeah, so my turn. I have a couple of questions. I wanted to verify, I think I heard Crystal say that an officer does not have to tell you while you're being arrested when you get arrested. Is that what I heard?
He doesn't tell you what you're being arrested for, like the charge. You have to say that you're under arrest, but he doesn't have to tell you the charge. So if they're arresting you, they don't have to tell you what the charge is.
Oh, interesting. I know that's probably a big misconception from a lot of people, because I certainly didn't know that. And of course, everybody's watching Law and Order, and everybody knows I'm supposed to know why I'm being arrested,
right?
Whatever. So I'm glad you cleared that part up. The other thing that I wanted to clear up a question is about concealed weapons or carrying a concealed weapon. When you have a concealed weapon permit or license to carry, are you allowed to have a loaded vehicle or loaded weapon in your car?
Chris, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So in terms of, you can absolutely have a firearm in your vehicle under the way Texas law is written, unless you are a felon or anything like that, okay? And there's other assault family member convictions that you can't possess a firearm for. So if you are legally allowed to possess a firearm, you can have a firearm, whether it's loaded or unloaded in your vehicle. You could have a round, you could simply have the magazine in the gun, or you can have a round in the chamber. Both of those are allowed under Texas law. The problem that people run into on gun cases is, one, they are doing something else illegal while possessing a firearm, and that results in a charge called an unlawful carrying of a weapon. It's a Class A misdemeanor. So let's say that I had marijuana in my vehicle, and I was also lawfully possessing a firearm in my vehicle. Now the firearm is lawful to have, unless I'm doing something else illegal other than a traffic violation. So the weed in my car would make that gun now illegal.
Unlawful. Okay, gotcha. All right.
Can I
And
ask
then,
something
Chris,
real
how
quick?
does that work with, is there still a concealed handgun, or is it, do you have to have, because I'm curious too. I don't know all the new gun laws, so.
Yeah, that's,
I'm
that
not
was
sure.
my,
I know you guys, I was like, how that applies. Also, if you do have a gun, I would say that when you're talking to the officers, just let them know that. I would definitely tell an officer, if you have a concealed handgun license, they can see that when they run your driver's license. But if you don't have a concealed, but you are carrying a weapon, I would always let that officer know that, so that they're aware. You know what I mean? I always believe in being upfront and as honest as possible so that everyone can be comfortable in a situation, because if everyone's comfortable, then there's less likely to have anything misconduct happen.
okay.
So the law about guns recently changed back in September of 2021. And so it allowed certain persons to carry guns on their persons without a license. And so it's not necessarily that you have to have the license to carry or the concealed carry anymore to possess a firearm, but it's just whether or not you can open carry or carry it on your hip or carry it in a shoulder holster or anything like that. The other big thing about carrying it in your car is to make sure it's not out in plain view or out in the open. Just so that it is hidden under a seat, in a glove box, in that center compartment, any one of those. But again, like Crystal said, the more upfront you are with officers, the less surprise there is later on. Because let's say you keep your wallet or you keep your insurance in the glove box, and you haven't told this officer about the firearm that's also in there. And so as soon as you're reaching over there, he sees the firearm, things escalate pretty quickly. And so we're trying to minimize the amount of surprise that's going on the roadside.
Okay, great. So for those folks that have a concealed weapon permit and then it's about to expire, they don't have to renew it?
It gets hairy real fast whenever it comes to firearms. Yeah.
Okay, here's my other question. When you're in a traffic stop or what have you, and police ask for the driver's information, are the passengers in the car also required to give identification?
So it's going to be based upon a belief whether or not the passenger is also engaged in some type of criminal activity. So they can, if they're being evasive or anything like that, then there may be reasonable suspicion to believe that this person has committed an offense, is committing an offense, or will be committing an offense. And that could also carry the necessity for the passenger to identify themselves. So a lot of these traffic stops, the officers, looking for people with open warrants and things like that. But the rights of passengers, they are there. They're a little bit less whenever it comes to search and seizures of someone else's vehicle, though.
Okay. Now, what about police entering into your home, or if they're on your personal property? What are, like I've heard somebody say, about police officers actually being on your property, or when are you supposed to allow them in or deny them entry into your home? Like if somebody got a call because they heard something down the block or whatever, and the police are coming to investigate, or they come to your house, when can you refuse to let them enter into your home?
So whenever it comes to I guess I don't want to say home intrusions, but allowing officers or denying them entry into your house, pretty much the basic rule is if you don't have a warrant, you can't come into my house. Okay, it's Texas. This is everybody's castle. Okay, but whenever it comes to, say, an ongoing emergency or something like that, some type of domestic violence situation, well, then, the law does allow those exceptions for officers to investigate something where they need to clear the house for any potential victims or anybody that needs assistance. So there are those limited exceptions, but the general rule is if you don't have a warrant, you can't come into the house. Whether or not it's on a small drug case or, say, one of the larger drug cases that Crystal would have worked on at the DA's office.
Okay. And you did speak.
Just a question on that. if you're an immigrant and you're driving your car from work back and forth, how can you prevent ICE or the police from asking you personal questions if you're an American citizen or not? Or you can they ask you that?
They can ask, you just don't have to, you don't have to give that information. Now, ICE is different, but with the, with like, you know, HPD or the sheriff's office and things like that, you don't have to disclose that information. Now, once you become arrested and they're putting you through the system, things get different, but among the original detention, you don't have to disclose that.
And here in Houston,
it's
not
a safe,
allowed to-
so they're not
not
going to ask you most times.
Okay.
Here's my other question about comply versus do not speak. Everybody has seen, I'm not sure if everybody has witnessed, but I know people may have known other people that have been in instances or situation where you, and I'm not saying, I know, definitely know that all officers are not bad officers, that there are a couple of bads, that's as in the industry. When you get those officers that pull you over just because they want to mess with somebody, then at what point do you comply versus not say anything? Because I know you pulled me over for nothing. I know I wasn't speeding. I know I had my signal light on. I know I didn't want a red light or a traffic sign. And you just have some officers that really want to overexert their authority and prove to people that they're in charge. What do you do in that instance?
I think that goes back to not fighting it on the street, right? You have to make sure that if it becomes a situation where you don't feel comfortable or safe, you need to do whatever you can to get yourself out of that situation, not like running or things like that. But if it means I'm just going to comply and do what you say, that's fine. And then I will fight that on the back end. And I'll file a complaint with my office through the website or going through the ACLU or any of the other agencies that are available to help that situation for misconduct of any kind of police department. But I think that for the most part, you should be able, there's a difference, you know, if they pull you over and it's a speeding situation, stuff like that, where are you coming from? I don't want to tell you that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to disclose that information or something like that versus you can't ask me that and da-da-da, you know what I mean? I think a lot of it is all in the demeanor. Not that anyone deserves to say just because you say something in one way or the other, but it's just, you know, if we can remain calm in a situation, then we can fight it subsequently. If that officer comes with attitude or disrespectful or aggression and things like that, it's about making sure that you remain safe and calm and you fight that in a safe environment.
Okay. And are all officers required to, if you request, are they required to give you your badge number and like their name and all this other kinds of stuff? If you feel like, okay, this is about to get escalated or whatever, are they required to give you their ID, their badge numbers?
I don't know about each agency because all, you know, I don't know what the other agencies do, but they should have it displayed right there. It should say their badge number and it should say their name right here displayed on their uniforms.
Okay, but if it's dark and you're on the street getting pulled over and you can't see it, can you ask for it?
You can definitely ask for that information. They should comply with you.
Okay. And you were mentioning some about the website.
Yes. So on the Police Transparency Hub, it's www.policetransparencyhouston.org. You can go on that website and you can file a complaint against any misconduct by the Houston Police Department. It's in 5 different languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Arabic. And so you can follow it in any of those 5 languages. You can also see the statistics and racial makeup of the Houston Police Department. You can see the information on site and release, traffic stops, all of that is you're able to manipulate it based on, you know, if you want to see traffic stops that happened this month or last month. The website's updated on the 2nd day of every month with the information that's coming directly from the police department.
And what was that website again?
On that, you know, a lot of times we as parents have, like, I have a grandson that has autism. There's a lot of mental issues that are going on in our community. Do you suggest, instead of calling a police officer when something that is not criminal, but it may be getting a little out of hand, to either call who to contact instead of the police, because police really shouldn't be handling mental issues or concerns.
Sorry. So with the mental health situation, you can definitely call the police, but one of the things that Mayor Turner's done is he's had set up so that if it's a call that you call 911, but it needs to be a mental health services, there's a, kind of segue where it goes towards mental health services. There's people at the emergency response team that will come out. And so if it's a situation, he's sent almost approximately $25 million towards those kind of initiatives, so that there's a lot more mental health workers coming to those type of situations where it's clean and safe for everyone. Yes, the crisis intervention team. Hi, Dee. So it shows you all of those things. There are areas where it's a psychologist coming out to the situation, a mental health professionals coming versus a police officer. There's teams where it's a police officer and a mental health professional coming out. And then it's just the diversion so that they can call when they're calling 911, if it's a safe scene and there's not a situation where, there's any kind of unsafe, whether it's a weapon or anything like that, but just a mental health episode, then it's sending those over. And the website, Nia, is www.houstonpolicetransparency.org.
Nia, you're on mute.
I was going to type it into the chat and I got kicked off. My computer just completely froze and shut down on me. So I don't know what happened just then. So I'll find it and type it into the chat.
I'm putting it in there now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. The one last thing I wanted to clarify, and I know that there are a couple of people from Lone Star Legal Aid that are on the call. I thought Lone Star and those other organizations, HVL, only did civil legal matters or assisted with civil legal matters. They also do criminal law?
So there's the HBA's law line, which has some criminal law stuff, I believe, as well as civil stuff. But at least there are, I believe, the last time I checked on all those, there are at least links to other resources that people can use to inform themselves and put themselves in a situation to look for, say, a Houston lawyer referral service or anything like that. So there are certain lists that are circulated of attorneys that help out on these types of things.
And I also think you can call the Harris County Public Defender's Office. Their cases come directly from the courts, but I'm sure that they have referral banks for, who to contact and agencies and things of that nature can point you in the right direction.
Okay, all right, good deal. Okay, I got kicked off, so I cannot see anything else that would have been in the chat previously. So do you guys see any other questions or anything in the chat box?
No.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that either of you would like to add really quickly before we go? Oh, go ahead.
I do have a question. Sorry about that. I have two boys, and when we've taught them how to respond and how to act when they get stopped. But one of them got stopped many years ago, and thank God we handled it. But the police officer automatically thought that he had stolen my car because we have two different names. And the police officer was very rude, automatically put handcuffs on our son, and he was only 16 years old. We got called right away. We got there when everything was happening. But how, we went through IAD, we filed complaints, everything got cleared up, which it taught our two boys, that we handled it, they handled it correctly. But, there's a lot of kids that are not able or are taught how to stay calm, even though you're not wrong, even though you're doing everything in this world right. There has to be a way that we can educate our younger youth how to stay calm, because just like you said, Crystal, if you don't stay calm, and you run, and even though you know you didn't do anything, you're still, your life is in jeopardy. What is it that we can do? Like Nia and I, this is a great process. This is a beginning, but what is it that we all can do to educate our youth on, look, calm down. Let's stay safe first. Because if our sons if we wouldn't have discussed this with our sons, this police officer was just going and, just going above and beyond.
I think it probably helped you, Myra, that you worked for the city and you knew the people in the police department. So that's a whole nother scenario in itself. So
But that's why I'm saying, I mean,
Yeah.
our kids were lucky because I did work for HPD at that time and I was able to call the chief and da. But there's not so many kids that have that type of parent assistance. So
Right.
what is it for the regular child? Let's just say.
Right. And I mean, just to be frank, there's the regular child and then there's a minority child. There's a lot of different levels to this. And so I think that there's an educational basis that we really have to work on, is just talking with our youth. Ashley, who's in my office, we've been working on trying to figure out what the best approach is to talk to our youth and trying to educate them on what your rights are and how you should remain calm, what the police are going to do, and just kind of teaching that. But I think it's definitely something that we can work on with your office. Also, you guys have so many contacts and things like that. So it's definitely something I think we should all kind of get together and come up with, a program or something like that. Like we do this, maybe we go into the school districts and things like that, because I think it's just very important to kind of get the message out there. And it's important to work with the police department, but not also with them, but letting them know, like, hey, this is an officer and this is what they're going to do. But then also allowing enough space so that people can talk freely, you know what I mean? Like, so you have to have them come in, but not let them be a focal point, because then it becomes, the officer is there and you don't want to talk about what you saw or any of those tough conversations. I have 2 boys and my kids are very young right now, so we don't have that situation, but there's a time when my 2 boys are going to grow older and they become, stop being, 1 and 4. So it's definitely something that I'm passionate about. And I look forward to working with you guys on how to kind of really do something about that situation.
I think it will definitely help if the relationships were better. If the officers that patrol, different communities actually knew the people in the community that they were actually assisting. So if you have these kids that are encountering the cops, they can easily say, hey, James, you're not supposed to be doing that. And they know them by name. They know who their parents are. They've already engaged with them so that the kids are not fearful of, of this particular officer. So they know if they get stopped, they should stop because, this is somebody that That makes a difference when you can build those relationships. But there are a lot of police officers that do not build those relationships. And I believe I mentioned it to you before about those substations that were in various communities.
Right.
People needed those substations. They had those relationships with those officers, at those points. But then when you close the offices, then what do? And now you got brand new, sometimes rookie officers that don't know anybody in the neighborhood, and that can create a problem.
Right. I completely agree with you, Nia. And I know that Chief Fenner is working on getting the officers back into the community, not just patrolling, but getting in the community and fostering those relationships. Because along with Mayor Turner, it is a strong belief that the community has to trust the police, and the police have to be a part of the community. They can't just come in when 911's involved and then expect the community to, do things and this and that. There has to be a mutual relationship there. And so that's what we're working on fostering, is bringing back the relationship between the 2 entities. Because once we can have that, we can solve a lot of crime, because everybody knows who did it, but I'm not calling because I don't trust you to not arrest me for telling you what happened, or, whatever the situation may be. So if we can really bring back the trust between the 2 communities, and it's got to start with being together, the only time you see a police officer is if someone got shot or something bad has happened. That's not going to foster that trust and, accountability that we need to bring back. And so that's a focal point.
Well, hopefully this will be the first of many dialogues that we can have and get more people in the community involved to actually, want to participate and want to have these open discussions and not.
Yeah, I'm putting you in charge, you and Myra. I expect a meeting invite for a proposal on how we are gonna fix this, because we are gonna work together and get this done.
You know what?
Nia and I
can
were
do it.
talking about having things like this with the high schools, going out and educating, because Nia and I were, even the colleges, because there's so many processes that our students don't know. And we would love both of y'all to work with us, because we have to come up with a step one. Everyone says, well, we need to do this, we need to do that. Let's start with step one and let's get it done. And then step 2, 3, 4, because
It'll grow.
once you get so many people planning and organizing, everyone forgets the step one is to even get it started.
Absolutely. I completely agree. So I look to working with you guys.
You guys get ready.
Yeah, we just took on another job.
I was just about to say that. I'm like, man, let's see, we got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's already booked. So when are we going to do this? On a Monday, Friday, or Saturday? How is this going to get done? So yeah,
we're going to get it done.
And see, this is a priority. It's not just something that is not important, and it's something that everyone already knows. This should be one of our priority number ones, is to get with the high schools, with the counselors, with the universities, with HDNC, and let's plan this programs that we can sit down and talk and just have a normal conversation with the youth and just go 1, 2, 3 and go through the process.
Absolutely.
Because they're scared too. They're, a lot of times our youth feel like they're by themselves and no one's listening to them, which I have children and I understand, sometimes I act like I'm not listening, but we are listening to the youth.
Ms. Deborah says it would be great for assembly in schools again for an officer to go out and speak to the kids. I believe that HPD does still have some of those kinds of programs, but it hasn't been requested. I think somebody from the schools actually have to request for them to go out and actually, have.
And they're working on bringing it back, but with COVID, a lot of things that they were doing weren't happening, and now it seems like we're turning a corner, but every time I think we're turning a corner, it's not really a corner, it's like another hill. But I'm hoping that this is actually, towards the end. So we were discussing how to do more community engagement and getting back into, the schools and the communities and things like that. So there's definitely a push for that for this year. But I do believe you're right about, if you want to have a presentation, probably reach out to the communities at HPD. I can find out the exact name of that department. It's Community Affairs. It's
right.
Houston Police Department Community Affairs Department would be the contact there for an officer. And I think it's good to have officers there, but I think it's also good to have conversations without them, because I think sometimes when they're there, it might create a little bit of a hostile environment where you don't feel as comfortable speaking as you would if there wasn't an officer there. So it's like, got to balance that, but that's a separate conversation for the three of us in our new program. And anyone else that wants to be involved in our program, reach out.
Chris, you're involved also. So we're all going to be working on one project.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, again, I hope that this is the first of many conversations that we're going to be having in the future. I definitely thank you, Chris, and Ms. Crystal for taking the time out this afternoon to provide this information. For those attorneys that are on with us, if you have not provided your bar number when you registered, the Houston Bar Association does offer continuing legal education credits for participating in the a month of service, the legal workshops that we do. So definitely take advantage of that and get that free credit. So we know how much CE credits actually cost. So definitely take advantage of that. With that being said, you touched on a little bit about hiring an attorney, Chris. And next week, next Wednesday, next Tuesday, we are having our how to hire an attorney workshop at 1 p.m. So we're going to get into a little bit more detail about legal services that are out there and what you need to do when you actually have to hire an attorney and engage and get quotes and things like that. So definitely tune in for that. I want to thank you guys, all of our participants that are joining us today for coming out. I will be sending out the link of this recorded session to everyone that has attended, and we ask that you either, watch it again or share it, with family members, co-workers, or whomever that can also benefit from the information that was shared here today. So thank you guys very much. Ms. Myra, of course, it
Guys,
goes without saying.
I just want to thank you both and Nia, because when you're a parent and you're watching your child grow, and when they leave the home, you don't know if they're going to be protected. And it's so important that we have a team that is thinking the same way, that is making sure that our youth are safe when they come home, but then at the same time that our youth understand the process, what you have to do. It's a team effort. So we're very grateful to you both. Nia, you're always amazing. You're always asking all the amazing, wonderful questions.
My head starts spinning. I just can't help it, because I'm thinking from the parental standpoint, not from the organization. It's like, I don't want, my daughter leaves here all the time, and I don't want to have to, it's stressful. I don't want to have to worry if my child is going to get pulled over when she leaves the house, or, if she's going to make it back home at night. I mean, it's bad enough you got car accidents and all this other stuff going on. That ain't something that I want to worry about every day, or every time I know she's on the road or whatever. It's stressful, and it's still.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna just leave it at that. But
thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
We'll keep on
guys.
talking and talking. Thank you, Chris.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Nia. You guys have a blessed day.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
And
Thank you,
everybody
guys.
go vote. Today is voting day. If you don't
Yes,
remember,
go
if
out
you
and
did not
vote.
early vote, go vote. And keep yourself safe, protect your families from wherever, however it is that you need to do. So thank you guys very much.
Thank
You all
you.
have a
Bye.
wonderful
you.
afternoon.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Crystal. You guys are great.